My name is Tony Robles. I am a professional pool player, and my nickname is the Silent Assassin. My dad was probably A plus player, and he used to take me to the pool room when I was. He started taking me to the pool when I was about 13 years old, and I walked in there, and a man asked me if I wanted to hit a couple of balls, and I said sure. And he gave me a book that night, a Steve Mizrak book, and I became so obsessed with the game just by the sounds of the balls going into the pocket. I read the entire book that night. It was practicing left-hand and right-hand English the very next day. My dad owned the pool room when I was 13 years old for about a year, and it closed down, and he opened up another one about a year and a half later.
Where?
He opened one up on Alabama and George Street in Brooklyn. It's like the borderline between Brooklyn and Queens. And he didn't last long at that location. It was a weird partnership. He had a partner that would work the day shift, and then in the evening, when it was my dad's turn to work his evening shift, his partner wouldn't go home, and he would spy through the window to make sure that my dad wasn't stealing money. Can you imagine that? My dad became so upset that after about a month, he said, I can't take it no more, just buy me out, I want to have nothing to do with you.
So he was only in for a pool room for a couple of years.
And then he wound up going on his own and opening up his third pool room, which he had for almost 17 years. In Bushwick, no, not Bushwick, it was in Brownsville, Brooklyn, New York. And it was called Tony's Pool Room. I became very obsessed with it right away. This is how I decided to become a professional pool player. It's actually a very interesting story. Well, there was this one guy named Carlos who was known as to be the best player in my dad's pool room at the time. And he was also the best handball player in the neighborhood as well. So I used to love watching him run out and run out and run out. And one day I asked him if he was willing to play a couple of games with me. He said, yeah. So I was very excited. So then what happened is he played a couple of games with me, and all of a sudden, when he beat me like the third game in a row, he says, rack the balls, in a very nasty way. And I looked at him like all surprised, and I was stunned. And he said, just rack the balls already. So I said, okay, let me just be quiet. Maybe I'll learn something, So I racked the balls. He broke and ran out again. And then he said, rack the effing balls. And he just completely caught me off guard. And I was really surprised by that. And I was 13 years old. I had never cursed in my entire life, blah, 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 whatever. And he beat me a game again. He ran out. And when he beat me that game, he said, you ain't never going to be anything in this game. So rack the effing balls again. And when he said it that time, I was so offended that for the first time in my life, the F word came out. And I said, F you. And when I said that to him, it just so happens to be that my dad happened to be walking in the pool room when I said that. But he was not there to hear what he had to say. So when I told my dad what he had done to me, what he had said to me, my dad obviously didn't want to hear it. And he told me that I was no longer allowed to play pool for at least 2 weeks. And mind you, I had just started learning how to play. I became so determined to become so good just to quiet this guy up and make him, pay for what he made me go through, because those 2 weeks without playing pool were pure torture for me because I had fallen in love with the game so much. So what happened is all of a sudden the room went out of business. My dad had to close up. I didn't see the guy for 5 years. Guy showed up out of nowhere. And I had already graduated high school. I had been playing 12 hours a day, 6 days a week for 2 consecutive years. When he walked in the room, I looked at him. And as soon as I saw that it was him, I became so excited. And I said, get your effing ass up at the table right now, baby. I said it just like that. And I was pumped. And that was the only time in the 29 years that I've been playing pool that I ever called anyone out. But it's because those 5 years that I practiced, I always had him in my mind. Always thinking every rack that I ran, I was playing against him because I was obsessed with beating this guy. Not only did I beat him about 20 to 21 games in a row, he walked out of the pool and I've never seen him again to this day. And it's funny because sometimes in life you have certain experiences that lead to you becoming great at something, and that was it for me there. And at the same time, my dad used to push me a lot too, so I feel like I had to prove him wrong a lot as well. But that was the main reason why I wound up, getting to the level that I got to, because that guy really upset me. And I was looking to get him back. And it felt so good. To this day, that felt better than me winning the BC in 2004, and that was my first major championship. That's correct. What happened is when I was practicing about 12 hours a day, I couldn't get enough on the pool table, enough table time. And when my dad had to actually turn off all the lights in the pool room to stop me from playing. And it was pitch black, and I kept hitting the balls, and I would listen to see if the ball went inside the pocket. And obviously sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. So then he would scream at me. I would run out of there, get in the station wagon, drive home. As soon as he fell asleep, because back then I had my license, I was like about 20. As soon as he fell asleep, I would sneak in his room quietly, take $2 to buy something to drink and something to eat, grab his car keys, and drive to the pool room, practice by myself all night long till about 9 in the morning. Once I got tired, I fell asleep on 3 chairs that I put together, because I tried sleeping on the pool table. That slate is too hard. There was no way. I mean, it's a backbreaker. So then what happened was, my dad would get there about 2 p.m., and he would see me sleeping in the chair, and that's when he realized how much I, loved the game and how bad I wanted to become a great player. I was playing in the World Championship in 1995 in Raleigh, North Carolina, the World Nine Ball Championships. And I had just beaten Kim Davenport, who's a phenomenal player, one of the best players of our time, 11-2. And I did not miss a single shot in that match, and I shook Kim Davenport's hand. He said, "You shot great. You hit me with a 5-pack." And a fan came up to me and looked at me and said, "It's a pleasure to meet you, but you're like a silent assassin. You kill, but you don't say a word. When you beat someone, it looks like it's just another day at the office for you." And I said, "Thanks, I really appreciate that." So my then girlfriend, Justine, happened to be there when he said that, and she went ahead and told Scott Smith, the tournament director, that Spectator had called me that. And that's when he started announcing my match. He's announced my very next match as Tony Robles, the silent assassin from New York City, and it's pretty much stuck with me since then. There was this place called Feudston's. It's a place that was on 241st Street and Broadway in the Bronx. It had been there years before I was born. And it's sad to say that they closed their doors about 6 months ago. But I played in my very first tournament at Feudston's when I was 15 years old. When I was 17, I finally made it to the finals. When I made it to the finals, I was so nervous that my cue stick almost fell out of my hands when I went to shoot a shot every single time.
Nervous?
Well, I wasn't a pro back then. I was 17 years old. I started when I was 13. So what happened was I realized that I had no experience, and obviously I lost. And then the very next week I finally won, even though I felt the same way. And then as time went on, as I started gaining more and more experience, playing against the world's greatest players, it got to the point where now when I play them, I just feel like I'm playing anyone else, just a regular person. Might have been Johnny Archer. I'm trying to think. That's a tough question. I really can't remember. The only person that I can think of right now is Gary Nolan. Even though some people didn't really consider him a pro, he was a very, very first strong player that I ever faced in a major tournament. He beat me. He beat me. He beat me pretty good. He beat me like 11-3 or 11-4, and I just missed everything in sight because again, that was my first major tournament, and that was when I was 18 years old. But before that, I played in the World Junior Championships when I was 17 years old, and I remember I finished, I believe, 9th through 12th, got a check for $525, became so happy I bought a $450 10-speed bicycle the very next day, and it only lasted me about maybe a week because I crashed into a car or something. I don't remember what it was, but it didn't last long at all. It was, I mean, I completely wrecked it. I was going pretty fast, I'm not going to lie.
So you can't drive.
When I played in the World Junior Championships, that's what we played. We played straight pool. And I had a friend of mine named Sammy Guzman. This kid was a genius at the pool table. He was destined to become a world champion. When he was only 19 years old, he almost beat Mike Siegel in the biggest tournament in history, which had over 500 players. They paid, I believe, $35,000 to $40,000 for first. He lost to Mike Siegel because Mike Siegel missed a cross-side bank, and it hit the point and lucked it in the opposite corner pocket when it was hill-hill. And Sammy was only 19 years old back then. But this kid had the heart of a lion, was fearless, was never afraid to step up to the table no matter who he played. And at the same time, he's the only living human being that I've ever seen break the balls so strong that sometimes, you know how sometimes when a player hits the balls very hard, the cue would jump off the table? This kid was so strong and so accurate that he's the only person that I've ever seen break 3 bulbs on a pool table because the cue ball will go literally straight up in the air and back down on the table, stop in the center of the table every single time. He had an incredible break.
Is he still around?
No, he passed away when he was 25 years old. Unfortunately, he got involved with some drug dealers, and they were chasing him. They were looking for him because he supposedly sold $50,000 worth of drugs, started spending it like it was his own money. His dad begged for his life and told him he would pay them off little by little, which he was, and they still killed him. And the way they trapped him was he was staying over at his sister's house, and 2 of his closest friends knocked on the door. He opened the door. As soon as he turned around, they shot him from the back, right in the back of the neck. And the strange thing about that story is that one of my brothers, Robert Robles, was hanging out with him that night and with us at Chelsea Billiards back then. We had just finished playing a match against someone, I don't know for how much. And what happened was my brother was supposed to stay with Sammy that night. And for whatever reason, because, you know, he used to hang out with him too, he just decided to go home instead. So it could have been my brother that you know, would have been dead or shot if he had decided to stay. I'm pretty sure of that because those guys were there to kill whoever was in the apartment. Well, I've always loved this sport, and anyone that knows me knows the passion that I have for this sport. I've always wanted to see the sport grow to hopefully the level of golf or tennis, and it really frustrates me to know that a lot of people out there won't give it a chance because they just look at it as just a hustler sport. Meanwhile, back at the ranch years ago, golfers used to hustle as well before it became a big sport, and so did tennis players. So it's you know, it sometimes becomes, you know, annoying, believe it or not, when you see the sport that you love and you're hoping that in your lifetime you'll see it go to that next level, but corporate America doesn't want to get involved because they just don't see it as a sport, or they don't see any reason why they should put any money in it if there's no live TV time for them to advertise their product. So that's the main reason why corporate America won't get involved in the sport.
There was one time.
What happened is in 2000, they had the U.S. Open Straight Pool Championships in the Roseland Ballroom in New York City. And I was playing against Johnny Archer, and I did the opening break. I didn't leave him a shot. He took an intentional scratch. I took an intentional scratch. He took another intentional scratch, and I took an intentional scratch. So then he went for a shot and missed it, a very tough shot, because he didn't want to scratch 3 times in a row and end up losing 16 points. And I ran 148 balls from there. And when I ran the 148 balls, I was 4 balls shy of the U.S. Open record of 152. So I would have run 152 and out and tied the U.S. Open record. Obviously, I was sick when I missed that 13 ball because I know the exact shot I missed. I know it like, I'll never forget that shot as long as I live. You know, I became so upset when I missed that shot. There were over 200 to 300 people there giving me a standing ovation when I missed that 13 ball, and I was pissed when I was in the chair. I was so pissed that I missed that ball. And, I became so upset when I missed that 13 that for the next 3 to 4 months, every time that shot came up, I missed it. Yeah, it kind of got to me mentally. But now it's actually one of my favorite shots. Yes, I'm pretty much like that. I can pretty much remember a shot. The thing is that for some reason, for some strange reason, a professional player seems to remember the worst shots more than the good shots, the great shots. And it's because they knew that they had that win right there and they just let it go by missing that one shot. So it kind of gets you because it kind of makes you feel like you gave them an early Christmas gift or something, or a bonus or something. My youngest brother, Orlando Robles, what a talent this kid is. If you think I have a stroke, you should see his stroke. His stroke can give my stroke the 7, 8, and 9 the break, and I have no chance. That's a God-honest truth. This kid is so talented that when he was 9 years old, he broke and ran 3 racks in a row on me in a race to 3, and I had already been playing for several years, and he had only been playing for almost a year. And that's a true story. We played a race to 3. I broke, I didn't make a ball on the break, and he ran out, ran out, and ran out. It's the only time he'd ever done that.
Where is he now?
He actually graduated college, has an incredible job with New York Life Insurance, just bought a house within the last year in Newburgh, New York, and has a 1-year-old son and got married. So I'm very proud of him. No, but you know what? He's a kind of kid that, he's so talented that he can pick up a cue after not hitting a ball for 2 years and he'll still run 9 balls. So he has the potential to become, but I don't think that's what he's looking to do right now. I had another brother by the name of Gilbert Robles who was shot to death in the mean streets of New York, Brooklyn. He had this agreement with some kid who was a thug and basically beat the living daylights out of the kid. And the kid happened to run into him in a bar about 2.5 weeks after that. And he decided to become brave because the kid was in front of his friends. So he went ahead and he took out a shotgun, put it on next to my brother's throat, and not for nothing, but the law is funny, because they gave this kid 6 to 8 because he claimed that my brother tried to take the shotgun or push the shotgun away from his neck and that it went off. Well, you just had a shotgun right by his throat. You should get 25 to life just for having the shotgun there because you had no business putting a shotgun in his throat. So that made no sense to me whatsoever. They gave the kid 6 to 8 and he was out within 6 years. So, my parents suffered a lot. A lot. I mean, my mother, one night she was washing the dishes. This was about 3, 4 months after he passed away. She was singing. I guess she always thought, my mother was always a great singer, but she never pursued it. But she was singing, and I think that was her way of distracting herself. And out of nowhere, she just broke down and started crying, and we all went to console her. As she was washing the dishes, she dropped the dish in the floor, it broke, and that's when we realized that, all of a sudden she started remembering things about my brother. So, I know what it's like to lose a brother or a family member, and, I pretty much feel for someone when they give me a similar story about something that's happened to them. But it's by far the hardest thing. I can never imagine what I would feel like if I were to lose my son. I couldn't even begin to comprehend that feeling, and I don't even want to think about it, to be honest with you. I have an 11-year-old son named Jonathan, who's the most wonderful boy in the world. I'm very proud of him. For the 3rd consecutive year, he's averaged 85 or higher in school. He just got his report card today, and his average was 85 to 90 in all subjects. So I'm very, very excited, about my son, and And I'm looking forward to big things. I expect a lot of big things from him. He plays a little bit of pool. He doesn't really get into it that much. We don't get that much of a chance because obviously I'm always teaching and traveling and playing tournaments and stuff like that. But I'm going to let him do whatever he wants in life. Obviously, I'm not going to push him into anything.
He likes.
I was laughing because I found it so funny because I had never put him in a pressure situation. So I thought he was just going to hit balls like any kid would. When he played his first match, he happened to play Bo Hopkins, who's Alan Hopkins' son. And, you know, they're buddies because I take him to Valley Forge every year, and Alan Hopkins takes his son, Bo Hopkins, to Valley Forge every year. And they hang out all the time in the room, running around. So they just pretty much talked throughout the match, and Bo snapped in the 9 on the break when it was hill, so he beat Jonathan 5-4. No big deal. When Jonathan found out that he was about to play one of the top junior players, all of a sudden he became very nervous. And when he was about to take his first shot, he looked at the shot, looked at me, and then looked at the shot again, and he went like this. Grabbed the chalk and looked at me and started chalking nervously, put it down. I found it so funny because I did not expect my son to react that way. And that's when I realized, you know, this kid has watched enough pool to know that that's how they react. So he's just probably trying to copy them. That's what he's trying to do, but he has no idea what he's doing. So that was very, very funny. I found that very hilarious. But, you know, he lost, and then after he lost, he said, I can't believe they put me in with a kid that didn't miss a ball. So it's like, it was so funny. I always want to see the sport grow, but if a kid were to come up to me right now and ask me, should I do this for a living, I would flat out say no, because I don't really see any future in it. See, the difference between me and other pros is that they're always struggling because their only source of income are tournaments. That's it. They have no other source of income. Me, I teach for a living. I also give exhibitions, do corporate parties, bar mitzvahs, you name it, I do it all. So I focus more on the teaching aspect of the game, and that's why I never really had problems paying my bills. But these players, if they're down on the 9 and they're feeling the heat, the first thing that goes through their mind is, if I miss this 9 ball, I don't pay the rent. That's a lot of pressure. And that's another major reason why I've always performed very well in tournaments in the past. Because I've never felt the need to have that kind of pressure. I've never put myself in a position to have that kind of pressure. And, you know, I can only imagine what it must feel like for these guys to miss a ball knowing they might not pay, I mean, shooting a shot knowing they might not pay the rent if they miss that shot. Straight pool. It's the purest game in the game of pool because there is no luck involved. It's very, very rare that a guy will miss a ball and leave you no shot. So, you know, 9 ball, a guy can miss 5 times in a row and leave you behind the ball every single time. And it's just so frustrating. I only play 9 ball because I really don't have much of a choice. That's, you know, that's what everyone plays nowadays. But if I have my choice, it'd definitely be straight pool or call ball 9 ball or call shot 9 ball. No, what happened is Kevin Trudeau added, I think, 20-point-something million dollars into a tour called the International Pool Tour. And his heart was in the right place. The very first tournament, he offered $30,000 to anyone that was in the Hall of Fame, which I thought, to this day, I respect him very, very much for that. He didn't have to do that. But he was trying to elevate the game to a level that it's never been before. Like golf, like tennis, bowling. And the reason why he offered $30,000 to players like Buddy Hall, Ray Martin is in his 70s, is because he appreciated the fact that these players put in so many years of hard work and never got rewarded for it, and that was his way of rewarding them. So they would guarantee $30,000 just for showing up. That doesn't include the money that they would have won in the tournament. Plus, they were like 2 or 3 rounds ahead, which guaranteed them more money than that. And what happened is a lot of players feel that he tried to go too fast because he was averaging anywhere from $1 to $3 million per tournament. So the last and final event that he had was a $3 million tournament, and first place paid $500,000, $500,000. I played in that tournament, and I was guaranteed $5,000 just for showing up without even hitting a ball. So if you had your tour card, you were guaranteed $5,000 just for showing up. If in a big $3 million event, if it was a $1 million or $2 million event, you were guaranteed anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 just for showing up, which was unheard of. The thing is that he tried to sell it to network television, and he started getting major sponsors like Sanyo, Vonage. A lot of these big companies started coming in, but he was supposed to sign some kind of a deal where he was going to make a lot of money doing betting on matches with internet gambling. And then right before they were supposed to sign the deal, supposedly that's when the government came in and decided to pass that bill that allows that makes it illegal for people to gamble online. So supposedly that's what forced the deal to fall through, and it didn't work out, and he just closed shop right there because, you know, he felt that that was his way of making money. He was going to sell the tour for $150 million at that point to some Asian guy that's a billionaire and who pretty much owns online gambling over there in Asia. But little by little, they're trying to make a comeback, but this time on a much smaller scale. And I just got back from California. I played an IPT challenge match over there, and I beat a gentleman by the name of Carl Boys from Great Britain. And we played...
Can you tell us a little about that match?
I was invited as a guest commentator to do Mike Siegel and John Schmidt's straight pool match, which was the undercard match before the main event, against Alex Pagulayan and Carl Boys. Alex Pagulayan called at the last second and said that he can't make it because he lost his passport. So since I was on my way there, they asked me if I was willing to take his place, and I said, of course. And I looked at that as a big opportunity. I played with a lot of hunger. I played really, really strong, and I pulled out the victory. So I'm very, very happy with the way I played, and it's an opportunity that I definitely took advantage of. And that's after having won 2 consecutive Predator 9-ball tour stops as well.
Is he the
The reason why I carry an extra shoelace in my case is because a lot of people don't know that I was born with a half foot. So my right foot is half the size as my left foot. So naturally my leg is shorter as well. So I limp when I walk. Some people try to say, oh, that's a nice Brooklyn walk you have. I said, I'm not trying to walk like I'm from Brooklyn, you know? So it's like, I get a kick out of that, but, you know, thanks, but no thanks. But when I was growing up, I thought that I was no good and I had no business being in the human race. That's how I felt ever since I was 13 years old, because I found it nearly impossible to find any kind of high-top shoe or high-top sneaker, because the only way that I can walk around in any type of shoe is if I were to wear a high-top, again, a high-top shoe or high-top sneaker, because then it'll kind of, you know, help me support my ankle. If I were to wear a short, how do you say it? Short what? A low-top sneaker or low-top shoe, my foot would literally slip out. So what happens is when I put on my shoes, I have to tie it up very tightly. And sometimes it gets to the point where eventually the shoelace breaks off. So one time I was in a match and my shoelace broke off and I didn't have a spare. So I had to walk really slowly before every shot, and everyone was wondering what was going on. And then after the match, I explained to them what was going on. But then what happened is, getting back to the story where I felt like I was no good. I kid you not, it's a true story. Most of the time, I hated myself. I didn't want to have anything to do with anyone. And that's why when I was growing up in school, I had very few friends. I stayed away from everyone. I was always quiet. I was always to myself. I never spoke to anyone. I can only think of maybe 5 friends that I ever had in all the years that I went to school. Until one day when I was about 20, 21 years old, I saw a black homeless man with no legs sitting down in the subway station, and this guy was as happy as any human being could be, and he was singing happy as a lark, and I'm saying, and who am I kidding? I said, if this guy has no legs and he's that happy, I should be ashamed of myself for thinking that I don't belong in the human race. And from that point on, I took a different attitude. I got into baseball, handball, everything. I was the second fastest runner on my baseball team. I can jump, I can run, I can do it. I'll race you if you want me to. You know? But it's like, and then from that point on, when I saw that man with no legs, I completely changed my attitude, and I never looked back since then. I've never been the type of person that I've ever given myself credit for anything. I just try to do and become the best that I can be. You know, but at the same time, I can honestly say that even though I never try to say anything in a bragging way, I am very proud of myself that I was able to get to this level, despite the fact that I was, you can say handicapped, call it whatever you want to call it, but I'm very proud of the fact that I got to the level, because anyone else would have easily quit. They said, oh, what am I doing, blah, 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 have their head screwed up, whatever. One thing that I do regret not taking up is martial arts, because when I was learning how to play pool, I was always a perfectionist. If I didn't do it perfectly, I wouldn't stop shooting that shot until I can do it 10, 20 times in a row. If I shot it 19 times in a row and missed it the 20th time, I would make myself start all over again until I made it 20 times in a row. So the thing is that when it came to martial arts, I've always been obsessed ever since I was like 16, 17 years old when I watched Jackie Chan in the Eagle's Shadow. You probably never heard of that movie, but that was one of his early films. And it was a great film. And sometimes I used to cut school just to go see that in Times Square, because back then they used to give nothing but martial arts films in Times Square. But the thing is that I was such a perfectionist in everything that I tried, that when I did try martial arts, I realized that there were certain steps that I couldn't do because I had a half foot. So I decided to not give it a shot at all because of that. And I regret it, because now that I have a different attitude, I realized I could have become a great martial artist, despite that, you know, the fact that that I have a half foot. But at the same time, I was always busy practicing 12 hours a day, 6 days a week for 2 consecutive years. The reason why I wasn't 7 days a week is because my mother wouldn't let me because of church on Sunday. So I didn't have much of a choice there. Oh, yeah.
Get a basis to go on from there and not.
When you practice 12 hours a day, you fall into such a dead stroke, and you build up so much confidence because you're constantly repeating shots over and over so many times, so much so to the point where you realize that, okay, I've already missed it this way 500 times in a row, so I know I'll never hit it like that as long as I live. Then you end up hitting it the other way. Oh, I just missed that 500 times in a row, so I know I'll never hit it that way. So now it gets to the point where you start recognizing the shots as they come up on the table. Well, I already hit it this way, I already hit it that way, so this has got to be this magic spot right here. And eventually that's what ends up happening. But it takes a lot of time to do that. In 12 hours a day, I once played for 18 consecutive hours. And let me tell you, Jim, I could not miss if I tried. I gambled with some guy for 8 hours, and I beat him out of 2,000 that night in Chelsea, and then went to my dad's pool and played another 10 hours. By the time the 18th hour came, I was in such dead stroke that I was putting the cue ball anywhere on the table and just smashing everything in the center of the pocket. It was unbelievable, because you just fall into this groove. And you start recognizing it as it comes. Last time I shot it, I hit it this way. Let me try it that way. That's what happens eventually. My dad tried teaching me, but my dad was more of a feel type player. You know, he would feel the angle, he would feel the spin. He wasn't very technical. And his friends, although they did mean well, gave me a lot of bad information. So I learned a lot of bad habits when I first started, and that's why it was a lot more difficult than it should have been when I was practicing those 12 hours a day, because I had to unlearn a lot of things that I started realizing after all those hours of practice that it was completely incorrect. That must have been a while back that I told you that, because I don't think it was recent.
Years ago,
because I'm 42 now, so I must have told you that when I was 37 or something. I don't know. But I no longer feel that way because, if you read a little bit on the history of the game, you'll notice that Joe Bossis, who was known as the Meat Man, I don't know why, I can't remember why, but he was one of the greatest players of that generation, the Mosconi generation. A lot of people don't know that he didn't turn pro until he was 42 years of age. He did not win a world championship until after the age of 50. Nick Varner played top-notch 9-ball until he was about 55, 56, 57 years old. The only reason he stopped is because his wife gave birth to a baby boy. So he pretty much quit because of that. But I realized that this is a game that you can go well into your 60s and still play top-notch pool, as long as you take care of yourself and you continue playing in enough tournaments. And I think that that's always been one of the strong points of my game, that despite the fact that I haven't taken it seriously in many years, obviously when the IPT came along, I started practicing every single day for that. But despite the fact that I haven't taken it very seriously, the only reason why I haven't is because I like to focus more on making sure I pay my bills. I'm making sure that I make a living for myself. The game isn't as secure, tour isn't as secure as the players would like it to be, because the players, one guy's going this way, the other guy's going that way, the other guy's going there, how much is going in my pocket? We're never going to get anywhere like that. Whereas the women are so organized that they can go to any association and say, if you don't do it this way, we're not going to play. And they have to do what they ask them to do. So when I became a board member of one of the organizations, the UPA, I became frustrated because the first thing that would come out of these players' mouths is, how much am I getting paid? So I said, you know what, these guys don't want to look out for themselves, and I'm going to look out for myself. That's why I created this tour. That's why I'm going to create a league. I'm looking for multiple ways, multiple sources of income, and I realized after I started this tour that a professional pool player's name, there's a lot of power in that name, especially if they have a good reputation. Not only can they end up figuring out, different ways to make money, but they can help the sport grow if they do the right thing for the players. And that's the reason why I created this tour, and everyone's loving it because I'm doing it for them.
Which tour is this?
The Predator 9-ball tour. And I realized that there were no events for open players in almost 15 years. I tried speaking to, many people about maybe doing a tournament. And I give the Tri-State credit, all the credit in the world, because they tried, but no one would give them the time of day. So I used my influence a bit. I approached Predator about the idea. They welcomed it with open arms, and that's how the Predator 9-ball tour was born. And, I structured it in a way where it gives everyone a chance to play. Alternate breaks gives them a chance to shoot. Lower entry fees if you're a lower level handicap player. If you're the highest finishing CD player, you get a bonus of 100. If you're the highest finishing female player, you get a bonus of 100. It keeps everyone happy. I give them the A, the B, C, D level pro open player of the year, brand new Predator acoustic at the end of the year, and we end up adding 3,000 to the finale, and everyone's happy.
Where are you headed?
Right now, I can honestly say, me as a professional, I'm more hungry. I'm hungrier now, or just as hungry when I first started gambling and playing in professional events. Even more so than when the IPT was around, believe it or not.
Why?
Because I realized that I threw away a lot of years of winning so many tournaments, and I'd come close so many times in the past, and for some reason, I came short every single time, except when I won the BCA in 2004. That was my first major tournament. A lot of people don't know that I finished runner-up that same year in 2004 with the UPA Pro Tour Championships. I lost to Danny Harriman in the finals. Actually, that was in 2002, my mistake. Originally, I lost 2 years prior to that, 2002. I lost in the finals of the same BCA Open 9-ball Championship to Charlie Williams. And then in December of that year, I lost in the finals against Danny Harriman, the UPA Pro Tour Championship, but I beat Nick Varner, Jimmy Wedge, Johnny Archer. I beat all the top players who were put in front of me in that tournament. So I was in dead stroke back then, But I don't feel like I was as focused or as hungry as I am now, because I feel that I have to make up for something that I didn't do in the past.
Um,
Believe it or not, Jim, I've been playing this game 29 years. There are people out there that still think I can't play. It's just the truth. And you know what? I don't blame them. I've never given them a reason to believe that I'm a great player. Now I am. You know, I just finished beating Carl Boyes, who's one of the top players, regarded as one of the top players in the entire world. He had huge success. Yeah, he didn't give me credit when I won, but that doesn't bother me, because what he thinks means nothing to me. It's what I think about myself that means everything. And I know I am a great player. And, you know, when I win tournaments, I'm not doing it for anyone. I'm doing it for myself. Because I know that if you work hard, the rewards come along with it. And just winning this match alone, you have no idea how many people have come to congratulate me. And that kind of reminded me of how I felt when I won in 2004. Except this time I got a little more respect for it, because I played a phenomenal match against this kid. But again, like I told you, I'm hungrier now than I was when I won the BCA. Because I got to the point where I said to myself, you know what? I can honestly say to myself that in the past, I've never truly given it my all. And ever since my girlfriend, Gail Glazebrook, came into my life, she has pushed me in a way no one's ever pushed me before. And she has inspired me to play at the level that I'm playing right now. She hates it when I mention that. She doesn't like to take credit for it. But that's why I give all the credit to. And that's why I love her so much. She's been an incredible inspiration to me and made me realize a lot of things that I never realized or knew about myself as a player and as a person. I guarantee you none of the top players knew of this guy. But there was this gentleman, was one of my dad's closest friends. His name was Wawa, believe it or not. His real name, Nicholas. We call him Nicolas. This man could have become a 5-time world champion, not a 1-time world champion. This guy had the most incredible cue ball control that I've ever seen in my entire life. And that includes any top player that's ever played the game. When they put him up against some of the greatest players in New York, he used to beat the living daylights out of them. Anyone that was put in front of him, he would beat them all. But he was, for whatever reason, he was never interested in playing in top tournaments. Never interested in doing that at all. So the thing is that he was a big influence when I was growing up. But then later on in life, as I started, you know, dominating the tri-state, when I first started playing 91 through 94, I was a tri-state player of the year for the first 4 years of the tour's existence. Along came a kid named Ginky. And I know Ginky since, you know, he first picked up a cue. I used to give him tips here and there, whatever. This kid was so obsessed with becoming a champion that when he finally got to that level, to this day I believe that he was destined to become a living legend. I thought he was a living legend. I didn't think there was anyone on planet Earth, including Efren Reyes and Earl Strickland, who were the best back then, and Johnny Archer. They had nothing on him. Absolutely nothing. My dad used to call him the computer. You know how a computer runs unless it slows down? It's programmed to do one thing and one thing alone. That's exactly how this kid was. It's like when you play a computer game, the computer always does the right move, no matter what, when you're playing chess. This kid knew all the right moves. So then when Ginky went out of the scene, Frankie, I know Frankie way before, Frankie Hernandez I'm talking about. I know Frankie since I was about 19 years old. Frankie was 17. Frankie Hernandez, Sammy Guzman, and myself used to hang out. We were like 3 brothers. Like one time I took a trip to Puerto Rico. They both bought plane tickets to go and meet up with me in Puerto Rico. That's how tight we were. You know, unfortunately, back then, Frankie, when he saw that Sammy flew to Puerto Rico to meet up with me, he bought a plane ticket and went to Puerto Rico because he loved the heart that Sammy has so much for the game that he wanted to learn from Sammy. And what happened was when we were in Puerto Rico, Sammy was already dealing with drugs. He needed to go to this town called Naranjito. He knew that I knew how to get to this town because one of my closest friends, Cano, lived in that town. I said, Sam, if you want me to take you there, do me a favor, open the trunk. He opened the trunk, and there was a big bag of heroin there. I said, Sam, I'm sorry. I love you like a dear brother, but I'm not going to go down with you for something that I've never done. I said, it wouldn't be fair to me. You would destroy my life. He said, I respect that. Thank you very much. And he went on his way. He managed to get over there. He sold it for $50,000, 50 grand. That's when he started spending the money like it was his own, and that's when they started, looking for him. So a lot of the stuff that Frankie has learned from the game, he picked up from Sammy Guzman. And eventually, little by little, we distance ourselves. Nothing great lasts forever. So, after a certain point in time, we stopped hanging out, and we pretty much went our own separate ways. So, Sammy was shot to death. Frankie went his way. I went my way. Well, what happened in the Mosconi Cup is I've always believed in being a great human being first and foremost before putting anything else on the table. And a lot of people have always loved me for that, and I've never asked for their love in return. That's just who I am. So I've always respected people exactly for what they are, people. Despite of your level of play, whether you play pool or not, I've always seen everyone as an equal. So I think that after a certain point in time, people started picking that up, and they started becoming close to me. And for whatever reason, the American players, they're not as tight with me as the European players are, because we don't really play against each other that much. Only when they come to America do we ever get to play against each other. But once we're done, it's like, so where are we going to go have dinner? That's how tight we are. But when we're on the table, we're looking to cut each other's throat. That's the God honest truth. So now what happened was the American players, since we're always playing against each other, they're so focused on winning that they try not to become too close with certain people. So I can kind of understand where they're coming from when it comes to that, because they feel that that kind of takes away from their killer instinct. So more so with me, because I'm such an easygoing person, So, what happened is one time, it was the year before I won the BCA in 2003, Johnny Archer started accusing me of giving him a bad rack. And I became really upset and offended by that, because anyone that knows me knows that I never give anyone a bad rack. But I'm always very offended when someone does give me a bad rack, because I demand the same respect in return. And you'd be surprised how many top players, even friends of mine, would give me a bad rack. So after a while, I started checking my racks no matter who I played. But anyway, when Johnny Archer accused me of a bad rack, and he really hit the balls bad, he didn't really hit them that great, I was offended, and I said, I can't believe you think I'm giving you a bad rack. As a matter of fact, you know what, I'm going to go take a break. And I said it with an attitude, with anger. And he realized that, and when I came back, he said, Tony, I'm sorry, I let it get to me, I didn't mean it that way. And I said, you know what, Johnny? I said, let's just play pool. That's what we're here for. We're here to play pool. We're here to entertain the crowd. Let's just play pool. And that's what we did. We just played pool, and luckily for me, I pulled out the match 11-10. Obviously Johnny wasn't that happy, but when you handle a situation as a professional, people respect that. If you handle it in a stupid way with an attitude, very few people will forget that, and they'll let it go. And that's how I've always conducted myself for most of my career. I looked at everyone as a professional person, whether they play pool or not. And at the same time, I've always tried to help people. Like, there are times where I've met people that can't afford lessons if their lives depended on it, and I just give them free lessons, because that's how much I want to see the sport grow. It's a beautiful sport, and again, it bothers me to know that a bowling ball goes in a dead straight line, and all you could do is curve it. That's all you can do with a ball. You just send in a straight line, curve it, and they're making all this money. When the game of pool, there are infinite amounts of shots on the pool table. You can even make the cue ball come back towards you. You can make it do a complete U-turn. You can do a lot of beautiful things with that cue ball. You can make it dance. Why can't we get the same amount of money? It's an indoor sport just like bowling is. Bowling isn't an outdoor sport. So why can't we make it happen? If I had to give one piece of advice for someone that wants to become a great player and has a potential to, do your best to make sure that you're always humble. Remain humble. Become a people person if you're capable of doing it, because it's not an easy thing to do. And that alone will bring you more money than you can ever imagine in the long run if you do it the right way. Because it's taken me years to realize that. I'm 42 years old and I just realized it. But again, that's because my girlfriend helped me. So the thing is that she helped me realize the potential that I've always had, which I never knew I had. And I'm actually going up to players like John Schmidt. John Schmidt, he's my buddy. You know, he's a real good guy. I told him the other day, you know, you just had a deal with this Q company. Why don't you ask him to start a tour in Florida? Take advantage of your name instead of letting someone take advantage of your name. And unfortunately, you have people here that are calling the players dumb, you know, and saying that they have no idea what they're doing, while back at the ranch, they're trying to take advantage of them. I'm not going to let anyone pimp me like that. I'd rather do my own thing before I let someone make millions off my name or all those other players' names and then end up benefiting from it. And then when everything is said and done, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do anything anymore. They have nothing left while the guy has a mansion. It's not going to happen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.